We begin tonight in Alberta, while two men were sentenced today to 6.5 years for their role in the Coutts border blockade. It was one of several across the country to protest COVID-19 rules and vaccine mandates back in 2022. All right, for more on the trial and sentencing, we reached Jeremy Newton. He's a criminal defense lawyer joining us from Calgary. Jeremy, thanks a lot for giving us your time today. We really appreciate it.
Of course, Angie. Thanks for having me.
Give me a sense, your assessment of this sentencing and, of course, what these two men were charged with.
Well, the sentences are obviously quite significant. They were charged with, on the face of it, and obviously the conspiracy to commit murder charge is a very serious one. They weren't convicted of that. But even the charges that were left, you look at them and say, these charges on their own don't seem particularly serious. But with these circumstances, the blockade of the border, the cache of weapons that were found, obviously very serious charges in the end. The justice felt they were so, and handed out sentences that I think will cause most people to do a double take. Very significant amounts of time in jail for these two individuals. Yeah, this case, as many have talked about it, being precedent-setting in terms of what we could expect in the future, or perhaps, as you say, lay the land, if you will, for future demonstrations or whatnot of whatever nature. I want to come back to the conspiracy to murder police officers. Walk me through that. They were not found guilty of it. My understanding is the Crown may be looking to appeal the decision, but walk us through that. That clearly, of course, was the more serious of the other charges. I agree. I understand the Crown may have already filed their appeal on that. It is certainly the most serious of the charge, and I think the justice commented if they had been convicted of that, they would have been looking at a double-digit term of imprisonment. They were obviously acquitted by the jury of that count. All that really means is that at least one person on the jury felt there wasn't enough to convict them beyond a reasonable doubt. It's an incredibly high standard. And knowing the evidence in this case, obviously observing it from the outside, there had to be some inferences that the Crown would have asked the jury to make. It's not as simple as we had someone saying, I'm going to go out and kill this police officer. Let's do that. Mm-hmm. They had to infer from text messages, from interviews, from the presence of the weapons, that was their intention. That is a very high standard the Crown had to meet. And that's, I wouldn't say it's unsurprising, but beyond a reasonable doubt, it's an incredible standard. And so we see cases that may seem strong from the outside result in acquittals all the time. And juries don't have to give reasons. All we know is they said yes or no. Here they said no. Right.
They said no. But I mean, even when we look at the details of this case, we even look at the details of the charges as well. Coming down now to 6.5 years for for each of these men. They've now, of course, time served. So they've been in jail. My understanding is since 2022 or earlier than that. So, of course, they're going to be serving about 2.5 or so years more. Is that too much, do you think? I mean, when we kind of look at the level of, I guess, charges here, but then on the flip side, when you look exactly what happened over the course of several days here during the pandemic, many would say this is unprecedented. We've never experienced times like this before.
And they're right. I don't think there's anything in recent memory or even distant memory that compares to what we're dealing with here. Mm-hmm. As the judge said, these sentences are aimed to denounce and deter other people who might consider engaging in similar behavior. The sentences are incredibly long. It's hard to say that they were too long or too short because, as you said, they are literally unprecedented. They are without a case to say, well, it was just like this case. They are new. They are precedent-setting. And I'm sure if there's ever anything like this again, they will look to this exact case to these two individuals in Lethbridge and say, well, this is what they got and we ought to shape our sentence accordingly. I'm sure many people will say it was too light. Many people will say it was a travesty of justice from the beginning. And I don't think the sentences change anyone's position here. I'm sure whatever you felt going in, you're feeling coming out.
I think so, and I think it really speaks to the conflicting views that have surrounded this case and what led up to all of this right from the start here. And as we talked about, this could be precedent-setting, and this will be something that they'll be looking to in the future if something like this were to unfold. What do you anticipate other reactions could be on this? We saw how polarized the situation was, how much it has become. We've seen the division between opinions that we saw over the course of the pandemic during that time in January, when essentially, areas across the country were stronghold. What do you think reaction is going to be like, or at least what you're watching for?
Well, I'm sure, as I said, whatever your opinion was about these individuals and their movement before, I'm sure you still feel the same way. What I notice is, there hasn't been anything like this since, but it's not like the dialogue in the public division has died down at all. If anything, the volume's probably gotten louder. The divisions have probably gotten more stark. I don't think anyone's going to see this and feel vindicated and feel like they ought to go do something similar. But given the level of discourse now, the protests we see even at the rest stops on the Trans-Canada outside of Calgary here in Alberta, and protests we see across the country, it's not unfathomable that you could see an incident like this again. And so it is truly remarkable. It's unprecedented, and it's hard to fathom where we go from here, because it's not like things have been any more light or any more calm in the last 2.5 years, have they?
Yeah, as you say, we are certainly still in unprecedented times. Jeremy, really appreciate you giving us your time and your analysis on this. Jeremy Newton is a criminal defense lawyer. Jeremy, thank you again for this.
Of course, Angie, thanks for having me.